Welcome back to part 3 of our interview with Tim David, where he tells us the number one strategy to being more influential in your everyday life, as well as why the nice guy doesn't always have to finish last. Don't go anywhere. Part 3 is coming up next.
Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast
with your host, Thor Conklin.
Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Thor Conklin here. We give you the tricks, the tips, the tools, the strategy, the technology, and the psychology peak performers use in order to get more done and execute at the highest level. If you know what to do but struggle with getting it all done, or simply want to raise your game to the next level, this podcast is for you. Sit back and enjoy. I want to switch a little bit here, and I want to talk about how you created yourself and how you became an expert and carved out this niche of influence. Because there's so many people listening today that are looking for the way that they create themselves. And I think we all do that in a certain way that is in a similar lane. Yeah, I'm sure parts of it was, when you transitioned from being a magician on stage, you just didn't go from that one day and then next day said, okay, here I am. What worked? What didn't work? And if you look back, what are some of the things that you would have done a little differently as you started to build your brand?
This is an interesting question. I wish there was a straight line, an easy answer.
It never is.
Yeah, I had a realization one day, and then I did this, and it was boom. Truth be told, I did not want to be labeled an influence expert. Early on in the process, I loved studying influence. I loved understanding people. I loved creating genuine connection. But when I put myself out in the marketplace as a speaker or as an edutainer, when I started, I was sort of half magician, half speaker. They sort of heard that word influence and thought it was, again, manipulation, evil, sleazy, slimy, persuasion-y kind of stuff. So that's not what I was. I didn't want to project that. So what I began doing was I began speaking and researching this idea of human connection. And I mentioned a little bit of it earlier about how we're losing this skill and how it's so important to create genuine connections with the people around us. And what I found is that, my gosh, when you connect with people, you become more influential. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. So you can't escape influence. As much as I tried to, when I was a magician, I tried to escape influence. I thought just practicing my card tricks would be good enough. I thought I didn't have to become influential. I didn't want to become influential. I am an introvert to a fault. Like, I am deeply passive. I am the person who is least likely to try to sell anything. So it was a very difficult realization for me at first to understand that influence is a part of life. It is what some would call a necessary evil. And when I learned that it doesn't necessarily have to be evil, when I learned that, this tier of ethics, when I studied human connection and I realized that, oh my gosh, you can just be a genuine, honest human being. Being influential does not require a personality transplant. Being influential doesn't mean that I have to fake it till I make it or put on this mask and go around networking events and glad handing and kissing up to people. And no, in fact, that makes you less influential. When you do anything that is really counter to who you are and inauthentic to who you are on a fundamental level, that decreases your influence. So this process for me is sort of a circuitous route. But at the end of the day, I certainly am passionate about and that's why I'm releasing this book. I'm releasing this book because, Thor, I think I have to tell you about the flowers.
All right. Tell me about the flowers.
So my wife graduated from college, her master's program. Super proud of her. We went to the ceremony, okay? Got there a little early, and as I'm walking around, I see this flower vendor outside of the arena where they're having this graduation ceremony. And he's shouting out numbers. This is $5. This is $10. This is $20. And he's got rows and rows laid out on the ground of different floral arrangements. So, being the loving husband that I am, I go right to the expensive side of the arrangements and I say, how much for these? He says $20. I say, sold. It's the most expensive thing he has. So it's like a dozen roses or half dozen roses or something like that. They just wrapped up in an elastic, and got some plastic around them. Not even baby's breath. They're kind of, not even that healthy looking, right? But it's the best thing he has. So I grab the roses and I meet up with my father-in-law. Now, as anybody who is married to a woman knows, the father-in-law, there's a relationship there, right? Now I have daughters now, so I understand why there's a natural sort of rivalry between the father of the bride and the groom, right? But we've always had a very friendly relationship. In fact, that rivalry never was more apparent than when my daughter was born. So my daughter's born, and Pepe, my father-in-law, right? He's the grandfather. He comes in, he's holding the baby, and he looks at me, and he looks at the baby, and he says, always remember, when Daddy says no, Pepe says yes, right? So we've always had that rivalry, but it's always been sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge, this and that. And I said, you're gonna get flowers because I got the most expensive ones. He's like, nah, I don't want to carry him around. Let's go grab some lunch. So we go grab lunch, and on the way back from lunch, we see this guy. And this guy has a cooler behind him, and he's just quietly asking people, does anybody need flowers? Anybody need flowers? He's not holding any flowers. He doesn't look like he belongs there. He doesn't look like he's a licensed vendor of any kind. But yet, Pepe smells an opportunity. He walks up to him. He says, what you got? He opens up the cooler, and they're the most gorgeous flowers you'd ever see. It's a beautiful bouquet. It's got more flowers than in my bouquet. They're healthier. They're arranged nicer. They got the baby's breath, et cetera, et cetera. How much? $15. So now I'm really upset, right? Because here's a guy who has a better product. He's got a better service. You know why? Because we told him the story of what happened to me. I'm like, oh, right across the street, I just paid $20 for these. He said, let me see those. He took the arrangement apart, added some of his beautiful flowers and his baby breath, wrapped them all up nice, put a ribbon around it, and didn't charge me a thing. So he's got a better product, better service, and a cheaper price. But yet, I was forced to settle for second best because he was too shy to influence me to buy his flowers. I was right across the street. There's a huge crowd around the other guy's table and arrangements. But for this nice flower vendor, the one who has what my the solution to my problem, I missed out on it. So I felt a little bit angry with him. Like, dude, why didn't you tell me? Why? And this is the question that I pose to any of your listeners. Why aren't you telling them in the way that they can hear it? Why aren't you creating your marketing, your sales interactions, your emails, all of your collateral? Why isn't it as influential as it can be? Why are you allowing the loud guy flower vendor to win, right? So that's why I wrote this book, Thor. I wrote this book for the nice flower guy. I said, you know what? This person is me when I started, and I know that the secret sauce for him and for the clients, ultimately at the end of the day, is stronger influence, and doing it in a way that is true to who he is, was true to who I am, and that's where true influence came from.
And what do you see stopping most of your clients from really stepping up and being more influential?
Misconceptions, fear, misunderstanding, and I think fear is the biggest, though. I think we have this fear of, I don't want to get someone to do something they don't want to do. I don't want to be influential. But what we said earlier, Thor, all things, everything that we do and everything that we don't do literally affects the neurophysiology of the people around us. We are affecting the brains and the minds of the people around us just by our existence. Everything we do, everything we don't do. So we are either influencing people on purpose or we are influencing people by accident. And I don't know about you, but I want to be intentional with what I do. And I don't want to create any sort of miscommunications. I want to communicate on purpose.
Absolutely. So give us one technique. And by the way, I want to make a point here because I don't want the audience to be to misunderstand what I said before. I don't like the word technique. It just kind of brings up a negative connotation for me. But it's really tools or techniques. But going back to NLP, if you're not familiar with NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, check it out. Study it. It is an amazing, amazing science. And if you don't understand it, you're going to be at a disadvantage because your competitors, many of them, know how to what it is and how to implement that. So there's nothing wrong with the science of the techniques. It's, as you said, what is the purpose in using those? Are you using those to influence people and to build relationships and rapport, or are you using that to manipulate? And that's where the difference comes in. But I wanted to bring up or ask you a question here, and that is, if someone is fearful, what's a technique that they can use in order to get past that fear and start to be more influential?
Exposure therapy, doing little tiny bite-sized moments, creating little tiny bite-sized moments of influence, creating tiny moments of connection with people, stepping outside of your comfort zone in small ways. Maybe you're not comfortable asking for something in person. Maybe you practice it and get it honed in an email form. And then, get more and more comfortable with that sort of wording and get used to it. Make it automatic. Make it part of who you are so that it just sort of comes out automatically when the moment arises. Because you never know when that moment will come when you need to be influential. They say the classic story is have your elevator pitch ready, right? Because you might be in an elevator and you only have a few floors to influence your ideal client, because your ideal client just stepped in the elevator with you. So, that moment may happen, but more importantly, you want to have your message ingrained in you so that you can deliver it in every conceivable way. So, start small. Find ways that you can genuinely connect with people. Like for me, starting small was really focusing on human connection. For me, starting small was, I don't want to be called an influence guy, so I'm going to go over here, way opposite of influence, and talk about the genuine human connection. You know what, Thor? I thought it was opposite. It's really the same thing. Yeah. So creating these sort of baby steps along the way was very, very helpful for me.
Yeah, it's fun. I'm the guy that is sitting in a restaurant or sitting having a glass of wine and talking to the stranger next door, right? And I'm always asking questions, and I embarrass people who go out with me because if it's a couple or they look like they're together, I'll always ask questions. So how'd you two meet? Oh, you've been dating for a while? What do you really like about him? Tell me 2 things you really like about him. So I'll start having them talk about each other in a positive manner. And, 20 minutes later, they're like, oh my God, who are you? Where'd you come from? What? It had nothing to do with me. It had to do with them. And one of the things in my life that I always try to do is leave any situation better than I found it. Whether that's picking up the wrapper off the floor or in a relationship or interaction with another human being, what can I do to leave them in a better state? You keep doing that, and I promise you, things come to you in multiples.
For sure. And there's no shortage, Thor, of techniques out there. There's no shortage of strategies. Yep. So find one that works for you. Find one that feels authentic and genuine. Find one that you can get excited about, that you can be consistent with, and that you can implement. Like I said, there's no shortage out there. There's plenty of techniques. So the more you understand people, the more relationships you form, the more techniques you have in your tool belt. And again, obviously, the stronger your ethical concerns are, then the easier all of this will be.
I love it. Tim, tell the audience how they can get a hold of you.
You can check me out on the internets. Tim David Magic is my handle on all the social medias, but you can also find me at moreinfluential.com/peak, P-E-A-K. I have some free bonuses and giveaways. One of the things I mentioned was the Influence Cheat Sheet, 61 science-based sales techniques, but really they're influence techniques that can be used in any encounter.
Tim, thank you very much for joining us today. I look forward to having you back on the show. Best of luck with the book. And I know I've got a few notes here, and I actually have a new standard operating procedure that we're going to implement with regards to our email. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for listening today. I really do appreciate your time, and I hope you found today's show valuable. If you would like to receive these shows automatically to your phone or to your computer, simply go to iTunes and subscribe. After listening to several of the shows, if you're so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating, as this helps us reach additional people and spread the message. If you're truly committed to taking your life to the next level and doing whatever it takes to become a peak performer, but something's holding you back, something is blocking your way, and you just can't seem to figure out what it is, send me an email to info@thorconklin.com, and I'd be more than happy to get on the phone with you. We'll schedule a 15-minute discovery call. No obligation, no cost. I absolutely love to hear from the listeners, and if there's something I can do to help, I'd be more than happy to do that. Also, if you found something of great interest in today's show and you want to share that with your friends and family, simply go to my Facebook page, Thor Conklin, click on the episode, hit the share button, and share it on your page. You can follow me at Twitter at Thor Conklin. The website is thorconklin.com. We're constantly adding new free resources, discussing additional tricks, tips, tools, and strategies on how to be a peak performer. Remember, I try to keep these episodes short so you can listen to them during dot time, doing other things, commuting, driving, walking, working out. Decide to be a peak performer in all that you do. And until tomorrow, have an absolutely amazing day.